Welcome back, guys, to another episode of BJJ White to Black. I am Edry McCabe, and this is where I document my path towards mastery. Um, since I did my last vlog, I had some really cool things. My brother got me some lighting, and he got me this cool neon sign, which I'm very grateful for because I'm broke, and it just makes the video quality better. So I really appreciate that, and also all the feedback and response from everyone. I'm so grateful for you guys. Um, but all that is kind of overshadowed by what I want to talk about today. Um, when I started this channel, my intention was to document not only my success, but also, probably more importantly, my failures. The point of me starting this channel as a white belt was to show the progression of my life as I move towards mastery. And it's inevitable that things are going to be ugly at times. And I don't want to wash over these parts of my life. It's my hope that by documenting my failures and other people who struggle with similar things, they could see me overcome my own problems, and maybe it could give them a little bit of encouragement. Not only you can overcome anything, but also that um, people go through stuff, you know. So with all that said, I guess I should just come out and say it. Before my last tournament, I smoked a pack of cigarettes, and I'm a little bit ashamed by this, and it does make me feel a little bit vulnerable to share this, but there it is. So let me give you guys a little bit of my history with cigarettes, and then I'll tell you what I think happened going into the tournament that caused this to go down. My first cigarette I had when I was 10 years old. I was like a little rebel kid, and me and my friend used to go and steal cigarettes and pornos from the 7-Eleven, and I would smoke a cigarette, and I got caught eventually, and that was it. That was like maybe a couple months of my life. But that was my first cigarette, and then I didn't smoke again until I was 17, and I had a boss that I was working for who smoked, and he'd always want to offer me cigarettes. I was like a little Christian kid, and he got a kick out of like corrupting me, you know. And so he'd give me cigarettes, and I'd smoke randomly with him, and then eventually he's like, "Hey, you need to go buy your own cigarettes." And so I started smoking when I was 17, and I didn't love smoking. There were times where I smoked a lot when I was like 17, 18, 19. I did quit when I was 23 for like 2 years. I got into kickboxing, and there was just no room for cigarettes there. But I started again, and randomly I smoked cigarettes off and on till I was 35. And I only stopped for like 6 months at a time. I'd kind of get like super focused on fitness, and then I would start smoking. Always when I smoked cigarettes, I felt like a failure. Like, um, what was I doing? You know? And so when some of you guys who are watching the channel know that in 2015, I was arrested for a DUI and cannabis possession in Arizona. And even though they didn't file charges on me at that moment, I did feel like I needed to get away and like reset my life. And so I moved to Oregon. My buddy had a cannabis farm, and he offered me a job up there. And I said, okay, just put me as far away from society as you can. And so he put me in this farm way up by Lake Selmac, miles from any store. And I was like, don't give me any money, just let me just be out here and kind of wean off cigarettes. And even then, which he did do that, and even then, I found $3 in change when I first got there, scoured my trailer for it, found it, walked miles to the nearest store, bought a pack of cigarettes, and smoked the whole pack. And before I actually quit smoking for good. And I was reading a book at the time called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. It's a really good book. And in the book, Michael says, if you want to know why you smoke cigarettes, just stop smoking and see what comes out. So when I stopped smoking after I had looked for every cigarette butt, and I was just so addicted. I realized that I had this extreme sadness, and I was a tough guy. And because I was a tough guy, I never wanted to appear sad because it made me feel weak. And so I was afraid to be weak around people. Since I was up at this farm and I was away from society, it allowed me to let this sadness out without anybody looking at me or judging me or anything. And I was really angry the first day and just like irritable, angry the second day. And then the third day, I just started crying. And I just cried about being disowned by my family. I cried about being a drug addict. I cried because I had been a bully at times. I cried for not loving myself, for being a drug addict, for being an alcoholic, and I just cried. After I processed all of these emotions, I was like, I'll never smoke a cigarette again. And I didn't smoke for years, for probably a year. And because I was a strong guy, I moved towards the enforcement security side of the farm. And when I got into security, I had to do a lot of things that I wasn't comfortable with. My boss was not a good person. And so I was in like, I had been in like a lot of some shootouts and knife fights and just some crazy stuff. And I started drinking and started smoking immediately because I felt there was a guilt inside of me that I felt. And I didn't, in order to not feel it, I just drowned it in like alcohol and cigarettes. And I got offered a really good, like partial ownership role of the company. And I was offered $1 million to stay on. And I quit the job. I decided to move to Humboldt and live with Master Yang Zhui Ming and get away because I realized like I was at a fork where it's either I'm going to quit smoking and I'm going to get my life together and become a great person, or I'm going to go into this, I'm going to chase money and trade all of like my inner peace and joy and happiness. And it was the best decision I ever made, although everybody thought it was crazy. And so I went and lived with Master Yang. And when I stayed with Master Yang for 6 months, I didn't smoke up there. But we left after 6 months. I got to leave and go home and visit my dad. On the Greyhound bus ride home, I stopped, got a pack of cigarettes, got a bottle of whiskey on the bus ride home after training 6 months Kung Fu. I smoked and drank for 2 weeks. Went back to Master Yang's, and then I did quit after that. Eventually I quit. I processed everything, got it out, and I didn't smoke again for almost 2 years. And then in 2018, I got charges filed against me from Arizona, and I realized I was probably going to go to prison for it. And immediately I started smoking cigarettes again. I was sad, and so immediately I started smoking. So when I did go to prison, I got sentenced for 3 years for a DUI and importation of cannabis into the state. And I decided I was going to quit smoking for good. I went to prison. I quit smoking, which was rough. It took me about 6 months to get through that process. And then I started jogging, and I was just very like focused on health. And I was like, I will never smoke a cigarette again. So what happened? How did I smoke? I blame Joe Rogan. I listened to one of his podcasts. It's so funny. You can hear something and it convinces you to break your own rules. And so I'm watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and his guest is smoking. And he's like, oh, do you mind? And Joe's Joe. He's like, cool Joe. He's like, no, he's like, let me have one of those. And he just smokes a cigarette. And so I think I could smoke a cigarette like here and there. I obviously can't smoke all the time, but one cigarette. So my friend comes in from out of town, and he's smoking, and I'm like, hey, let me get one of those. And this is a few months ago. So I take a cigarette, and then I don't think nothing of it. I didn't even like it really. But a few weeks later, I was somewhere, I had a drink, and I asked somebody else for a cigarette. I didn't tell anybody about this. This is like my quiet secret. Um, and then every few weeks when I would drink or something, or if I was around somebody, I'd be like, oh, let me get one, to the point where I could have a cigarette like once or twice a month. And then about 10 days before my jiu-jitsu tournament, I went out drinking with my brother, and I got drunk, and I wanted a cigarette and nobody had any. And so I stopped at the store and I bought a pack. And I smoked a cigarette every night that week, 7 cigarettes, 10 days before the tournament, from Wednesday to Wednesday. And then that Wednesday before the tournament, I went out drinking again because my dad was retiring. And we went out, and I was like, oh, broke another one of my rules. And I ended up smoking all the cigarettes except for one in that pack, all of them. The rest, the other 10 cigarettes, 11 cigarettes, whatever. And like the night before the tournament, I smoked a cigarette, and I showed up to the tournament, and my coach was like, dude, you look exhausted. It was the cigarettes. It made me have bad dreams, and it like messed up my sleep. And I had this guilt and shame, like, what am I doing? But I couldn't quit. And after a tournament, I usually go out drinking, but this tournament was different. I won gold in the open weight division my last 2 tournaments. In fact, I only lost 1 match in 3 tournaments. And in my very first tournament, I lost 1 match in overtime. And in this tournament, I lost a match. Like, the guy was in better shape than me. I was tired. I watched the video. It was horrible to watch because I knew I wasn't 100%. And it's the second match I've ever lost in 4 tournaments. Would I have won if I didn't smoke? I mean, we'll never know, and that kills me. So that night when I went out with the team, I didn't drink at all. I usually have something, and I was like, this drinking, it really, I didn't have the willpower to go out with my friends and not drink, or go out with my family and be like, oh, I'm training, I'm not going to drink. I didn't have that willpower. I kind of was like, screw it. And that's the same attitude I have with cigarettes. And it's like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. The meaning of my life, the reason I started this channel is the meaning of my life is to find out what my full human potential is. The path to mastery isn't just me getting good at an armbar or a triangle or whatever. It's also, am I in control of my own desires? Am I in control of my own willpower? And I'm obviously not, So now going to this next tournament, I haven't signed up for another tournament, but I imagine it'll be in like 3 or 4 months. I'm not drinking until the next tournament. I'm not going to have 1 beer. Guys offer me drinks, and I'm like, I don't drink. I don't want 1 drop, because I need to get comfortable with the idea that I could say no if I'm out with a group of people, and have control of my life. And there's no room in my life for smoking. And so right now, there's no room in my life for drinking, and I might not even listen to Joe Rogan. I don't know, Anyways, I hope that you guys got something out of this episode. I know that there's a lot of people that struggle with addiction in the form of food, porn, cigarettes, drugs, video games, anything that's going to prevent you from being your greatest self. If you can't stop doing that, it's an addiction. And I'm not qualified really to give any advice on quitting cigarettes, since I recently smoked. But I will keep you guys posted on my journey, like on this process of not drinking, not smoking. And hopefully we look back on this video in like 5 or 10 years, and I'm so far beyond cigarettes and these types of weaknesses that it's kind of just this novelty thing to look back and say, oh, I can't believe I did that. And so that's really my hope. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.